The Boys in Blue, New York City FC. You know, for how much their supporters like to make fun of Red Bull New York for being named after an energy drink and technically playing their games in the state of New Jersey, ultimately, their insults fall a little flat. Because at the end of the day, NYCFC still play their games in a baseball stadium. And on one occasion, a college football stadium in the state of Connecticut. Yeah, that was weird. Actually, I went to that game. Yeah, I bought the cheapest tickets possible, and because barely anyone was there, security didn't care, so I just walked right up to the front row. That was actually pretty sweet. I also went to a game at Yankee Stadium, and I gotta say, that was also kinda weird. I mean, don't get me wrong, the new Yankee Stadium is really cool, and walking around doing some sightseeing before the game, that was awesome. But it still didn't exactly feel right, because you just couldn't get over the fact that you were watching a soccer game in a baseball stadium. Now, in truth, when the game actually starts, it's really not that big of a deal, because you sort of get over the different sight lines and you get over the small field dimensions, because you're actually focusing on the game itself. But then, when the game ends and you make your way to the exit, you take one last look around the stadium, and you remember pretty quickly that you are indeed in a baseball stadium. Now, I'm pretty sure no one in MLS and NYCFC actually want this. Everyone would agree that a soccer-specific stadium needs to happen sooner rather than later, but while the Euro snobs and critics of MLS will, rightfully so, rag on MLS for this, honestly, for the time being, is playing in Yankee Stadium doable? And the answer is yes, this is an acceptable option for playing soccer. Actually, you know what? I'm deleting that. No, screw this. This is not acceptable anymore. Okay, so while the game I was at didn't have any major issues, it seems as though the field condition, I don't know, it's been deteriorating over the years. Like, I swear, look at this. I mean, Jesus Christ, like, what is this? This is ridiculous. And I'm not even a City supporter. And just as a fan of the league, this is embarrassing. Like, why don't they have their own stadium? Why does NYCFC play at Yankee Stadium? Well, let's go all the way back to 2013, when New York City was announced as an expansion market. See, a second team in New York was inevitable for the league. There were rumors going on for years. And for a while, it was believed that the Kosmos from the NASL of all teams would be revived. Wow, the Kosmos in MLS. That would have been something special. However, during meetings with Don Garber about potential expansion, the higher-ups with the Kosmos didn't agree with the single entity model. So, yes, that means the Kosmos are #ProRel for USA. And they also weren't willing to hand over $100 million for the expansion fee, which, by the way, $100 million, while at the time that was the most expensive expansion fee ever, that's a bargain now, with current teams having to pay more than $200 million. So, the Kosmos are out, but MLS still had options. For a brief time, it looked like Barcelona might be investing in a New York franchise, but then they backed out too. And then, Manchester City, who teamed up with the New York Yankees, where did that partnership come from? Whatever. They submitted their bid, and now we got NYCFC. Now, to oversimplify the expansion process into MLS, you really need to do two things. I mean, number one, you need to pay the expansion fee, and number two, you need to prove that you have a solid stadium plan. The first thing, pretty black and white. You either have the money or you don't. The second thing is when things get a little more gray. Because as it turns out, what's considered a solid stadium plan is all subjective. It's not just drawing up some blueprints and start building the next week. No, you also have to make sure the city you're building in wants that stadium, and you gotta figure out who's paying for it. Now, I would think a solid stadium plan is making sure you already have your own stadium. But teams are coming in playing in temporary stadiums with the intention of eventually moving into their own digs. We've seen it with Minnesota, Cincinnati, Nashville, etc. Like, seriously, a ton of teams do this now, including New York City. Now, most of the time, it works out. Teams do eventually leave for a much fancier home of their own. But for New York City, it didn't exactly work out. Yeah, that's where Don Garber screwed up on this one. The solid stadium plan, turns out, wasn't so solid. Yankee Stadium was only supposed to be the home for 2 or 3 seasons, but now we're heading into year 6 with no real solution on the horizon. It's not for lack of effort by New York City FC, though. I mean, they're trying. If you Wikipedia New York City FC Stadium, you can see there have been 7 proposed different sites for this stadium. But it's mission impossible. I mean, finding enough space for a stadium in New York City is impossible. There's just not enough room. And it hasn't happened yet for a variety of reasons. For example, in the Bronx, they would have had to demolish a factory and a parking garage, and that would have required public funding, which the mayor was against. Now, they had some potential in Belmont Park, but then the Islanders hockey team built the stadium first, so that's out. I think the biggest blow came from Flushing Meadows, though. Here they would have had to still do some cleanup. They would have had to build a stadium on the site of the decommissioned Flushing Airport, but again, it was asking for public funding. In addition, the New York Mets were against building a stadium so close to theirs, and they were asking for $40 million in compensation just to share parking lots. Yeah, seems kind of outlandish, right? But then you remember, oh yeah, New York City FC is owned by the Yankees, and this is Mets territory. During these negotiations, Don Garber said, "There is no plan B should the Flushing Meadows plan fall through." Whoops. Now, I will say this, at least they're being true to their team name and actually looking to the city to build a stadium. Trust me, the worst thing they can do is go north of the city and build into the suburbs. I mean, as a Fire fan, I had to deal with Bridgeview, and now that team is moving out of a soccer-specific stadium and into a football stadium downtown, which I know seems backwards, but yeah, location, it's kind of a big deal. And we do have to recognize that at Yankee Stadium, New York City has done pretty well, never averaging lower than 20,000 fans. Now, it's been lower the last 2 seasons, but I think you can contribute that to no more globally recognized superstars like David Villa or Pirlo. And because people are probably sick of Yankee Stadium. I mean, the shine has worn off. It's not quirky anymore to play in a baseball stadium. It's not a novelty anymore. It's just annoying. And New York City needs to move out of Yankee Stadium ASAP. I'll go as far as to say that I'm not sure New York City FC is a favorable destination for international superstars anymore. I think we will continue to see the stars pick LA over New York. I mean, it was a destination in the beginning, but there's a reason why they haven't gotten another Villa or Pirlo or Lampard in New York City. And we saw it this year when the Yankees made the MLB playoffs. And the Yankees, they are the primary tenant. They deserve priority. By the way, the Yankees, if you haven't realized, they're kind of good at baseball, so you can bet they'll be in more playoffs in the future. It's just so frustrating because if NYCFC build their own stadium in the city, their value to MLS skyrockets. They instantly become one of the premier teams in the league. And I know, they've made the playoffs. They've done pretty well so far, but what you are seeing now is nothing compared to what this team can potentially become. They need this, and MLS needs this as well. Okay, to be honest, I don't have an answer. I don't know what they gotta do to make it happen. Which, looking back, it kind of makes it seem like this whole video was a waste of time. But Don Garber, I beg you, before you keep adding teams, please fix some of the teams already in this league. I mean, this NYCFC stadium, this should be one of the highest priorities of the league for this upcoming season. Yankee Stadium, it's not cutting it anymore. I'm back, and I was definitely a little rusty in making this. But if you're a fan of the league or just interested in finding out more about MLS, remember to subscribe. And also, let me know what you want to see a video on next. And thank you for watching.